think we are ready to go. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad you are here. My name is Kristen Poland, and I am the CEO of notMYkid, joined by some of our best notMYkid employees. And we are so excited to have Mayor Corey Woods from the City of Tempe with us. So welcome, Mayor. I'm going to give a quick intro to everybody. We are so fortunate to have this partnership with the City of Tempe and the Tempe Coalition to offer you the best resources we can around youth mental health. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mayor Corey Woods, who was elected as, excuse me, I'm going to put on my glasses here. Mayor Corey Woods, who was elected mayor of the City of Tempe in March 2020. In his professional career, he's the chief of staff at ASU Preparatory Academy. Mayor Woods is responsible for assisting the managing director with operations, external partnerships, and strategic initiatives. He previously served as the chief operating officer for the Greater Phoenix Urban League, director of college and career articulation for the Phoenix Union High School District, and director of government relations for the American Lung Association of Arizona. Mayor Woods served as a council member for the City of Tempe from July 2008 to July 2016. He was elected to the Tempe City Council in May 2008 and re-elected in March 2012. Mayor Woods was instrumental in guiding city policy that led to Tempe's perfect score in the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index. He championed initiatives in the areas of affordable housing and human services, while working tirelessly to improve community development standards to attract business investment and protect neighborhoods. Mayor Woods graduated from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor in April of 2000 with his BA in political science and a minor in African American studies. After college, Mayor Woods was a teaching assistant at ASU for 3 years. In May 2018, Woods earned a Master of Arts in Educational Policy from ASU's Mary Lou Fulton College of Education. We are so grateful to have you, Mayor, and we're going to pass it to you to address our audience. Thank you so much for being here with us.
First of all, I would say thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And if you see my camera turn off for a second, it's only because I was driving to get to a location where I could actually really park. So I'll turn it off for 2 seconds as I talk, and then I will come right back on. But I wanted to say, first of all, just thank you very much to notMYkid for having me here today. And we're obviously very happy to have the partnership with you at the City of Tempe as well. I've been mayor of the City of Tempe now for about 3.5 months. It's been a very interesting 3.5 months. I'll be the first one to tell you. The things that I campaigned on back when I first started, talking about traffic and economic development and affordable housing. Obviously, there were a lot of things that have happened since then, and I've had to clearly kind of adjust some of my focus while still making sure that some of those initiatives move forward. So it's been very interesting to me personally just to have to focus on big things like COVID-19. We're talking about things in terms of reform when it comes to public safety and a whole bunch of other items. But at the same time, I still have to make sure that the drinking water is safe to drink, that the parks are still clean, that people still feel safe in their neighborhoods or going to their neighborhood school. So it's interesting, you have to do all of those things at the same time to still make sure that the residents of the City of Tempe are experiencing a very high quality of life, which is what they've come to expect and frankly, what they should deserve from all of us. But the thing I wanted to talk to you about even more specifically today, and now that I'm parked, I'm taking that seatbelt off. That's a little bit restrictive. The biggest thing is frankly talking about mental health and how important it is. So I'll just have a very real conversation with everyone watching this right now on Facebook Live and on this Zoom webinar. I have seen a therapist at various points over the last few years, because my perspective is it's really important that we actually are mentally healthy and that we're getting the assistance that we need and having the conversations that we frankly need to have. Many times someone might look at me and say, well, for someone who's the mayor of a city or someone who's perceived to be in a powerful position, is that the kind of person that really has challenges? Do they have emotional needs? Do they have, mental health challenges? The reality is, I think all of us have challenges. We all have things in our lives that are tough to deal with, situations that are just really hard to get past and really hard to get through, people that we need to talk to at various points in our life when we might be suffering with something, we're struggling through a particular issue. And it's one of those things that I had to really kind of begin to get over my own personal stigma about, because I'm almost 42 years old. And when I was young, I remember many times people talking about, you shouldn't ever go to a therapist. You should never seek counseling. It's not the right thing to do. People will judge you. It will follow you around for the rest of your life. And what I've been really happy about is in the last few years, we've begun to have a much more enlightened view about mental health, frankly, having conversations with a counselor, talking to a therapist, getting the assistance you need. Frankly, sometimes just being able to talk to someone who's not a parent, who's not a sibling, who's not your best friend, but someone who's actually trained to be able to have those conversations with you. And you know what? There's no stigma attached to it. There's nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with doing everything you need to do to preserve your mental health. Because if you're not in a position where you're feeling good about yourself, you can't be any good to anyone else. And so it's really critically important that we continue to talk about things like mental health in a very public way, because we have to continue to hammer away with that and remove the stigma that people have about talking about mental health challenges, not only in Tempe, but the entire state of Arizona and frankly, our entire country. There is nothing wrong with it. For us to be the best possible selves we can be, we are all unique individuals and we all have different needs and wants. And it's important for all of us to, frankly, to embrace those things and to do whatever you can to be a happy, healthy, fulfilled person, whatever that happens to be. And I want you all to know, from me personally, as someone who's also gone through my own challenges in life, quite honestly, and has sometimes talked to a friend, has sometimes talked to my parents, and has sometimes had to talk to a counselor. There is nothing wrong with that. You have those conversations and you become a better person and you're more in touch with your feelings and you can be good to yourself and therefore you can be good to others and you can put out good into the world. So it's critically important, and I'm so glad that we're having these conversations, frankly, as a society. And I'm really glad that notMYkid is facilitating discussions like this, because they are critically important to have. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here today with you, and happy to stay on and answer any questions that you might have.
Mayor, thank you. You're an absolute inspiration. What a way to open a message, because really why we are coming together today is to really focus on eliminating the stigma surrounding mental health, that it's okay to ask for help. And we want that message loud and clear, that treating our mental health makes us better for everybody. So that vulnerability you just shared means so much to all of us. I think the conversations that we have in notMYkid all the time is, how do we make it easier and put it in front of people in a way that is attainable and accessible. So thank you so much for being here today. I am going to introduce the notMYkid team to present the program today. I want to make sure, can you stay for the entire program, or would you like some questions from the audience before you get to your next meeting? We know you have a very busy schedule today.
Whatever you would like. If you want me to just take some Q&A right now, I mean, that's totally fine. I'm more than happy to.
Okay, I say we roll with that and put
all right.
to the audience. We are streaming live on Facebook. I do want to encourage the audience. The other way we've handled this before is, a lot of times people will have questions as we go with the program material. And if there is a question that's directed just to you, we'll make sure you get it so you can answer it too. So I think a lot of people, sometimes they need the information, but as we see some questions come in, Ariza, I want to see if you have anything before we get started.
You know what? Let me look at our Facebook.
You've got a comment from Michelle Plouffe, a friend of mine, thanking you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are really, really grateful to have you here. And I think the best way for us to do this is, if there are questions, we're going to get on with the program right now. But if there's any that are specific to you, we're going to send those your way and we can address those with the audience. So
and what I can do too, I can just tell you, Kristen, I'm actually driving from one location to the next. So what I'll do, whatever, is I'll just take my screen off, whatever, and put it on mute, and I will continue to drive. I should be there in the next 10 minutes. And so
Awesome.
obviously, if anything pops up, at least I will still be on the call and you can ask me right then. So
that's awesome. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, everybody. So let's introduce the Not My Kid team that's presenting today. And again, thank you all for joining and tuning in. I am in the company of the Not My Kid team. I've got Geronda Montano. Raise your hand, Geronda. She's our Chief Program Officer, has been with Not My Kids for 5 years now, oversees all of our programs in the community and in schools. I'd like to introduce Shane Watson. He's our Public Information Officer, our content expert, presenter. He also manages, oversees, and presents our early intervention program called Project Rewind. And then Sarah Grotto. She is our prevention manager, and she handles a lot of the sustainability and grant funds and looks at all the programs across the board for Not My Kid, so we can continuously look at what the trends are and the data and make sure that we are writing programs, developing programs, and serving the community in the best way we can based on what the needs are. And we have been heavily involved in the City of Tempe for many years. We are fortunate to have so many wonderful partnerships with the city. And again, I want to stress the Tempe Coalition as our strongest partner, a coalition of many organizations that come together to address substance use prevention in the community. And all of this made possible through funding from the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family. So I want to thank everybody that makes this work, this incredibly important work, possible. Mental health is a priority topic for us. And so we are very excited to get on with the program. So Shane, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you very much. While Geronda is loading up the presentation, I just want to follow in Kristen's footsteps and thank Mayor Woods again. Leading by example. Mental health is health. The sooner that we can lead by example and we can say, I've seen a counselor, I've seen a therapist, I think mental and behavioral health is important, the sooner that those who are on the fence about asking for help will be emboldened to ask for help. We would not be ashamed to go to an emergency room if we had a broken leg. We should not feel ashamed to go to a counselor or a therapist when we are dealing with a mental health challenge. So thank you so much again, Mayor Woods. That's an incredible way to start us off. And Geronda, if you would go to the next slide, please. By the way, really briefly, I've been with Not My Kid close to 8 years, and I speak on this topic of mental health today from 3 different standpoints. Number one is personally, as someone who's gone through mental health challenges of my own in the past. Second is professionally through nearly 8 years of work with Not My Kid, and also being a registered assist suicide intervention trainer. Geronda and I are both assist trainers, and we facilitate 2-day, 14-hour suicide intervention workshops. My third connection to this topic is, like many of you who are watching this, I am a parent. I'm the very proud dad of an amazing little girl, and I want to do not only what I can to equip my family with the tools, the knowledge, the resources to protect my kids, I want to do the same for you. Prevention does work, and mental health education does work. So on this next slide, we are actually going to ask you a question. You're going to have the opportunity to ask us and Mayor Woods questions as we go along. But if you wouldn't mind answering this question down in the chat box, what do people do to protect or improve their health? There is a lot of lived experience, not only on this panel, but in the audience. Those of you who are watching this, you have a ton of experience. You can learn from each other, and we can learn from you. So let me look down in the chat box. What do people do to protect or improve their health? I'm seeing exercise right here. Excellent. Self-care is a really good one. Talk to a confidant. Exactly like Mayor Woods said, just getting it out, just dealing with it. Meditation, that is huge. Centering yourself, clearing your mind, being present, being mindful, seeing exercise again, taking care of your sleep and your nutrition. Absolutely. I'll give you a few more seconds here before we move on. It's important to think of what we can do to not arrive at a point where we are facing a behavioral or mental health crisis. things that we can do to try to prevent this. Now, Deronda, if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, next question for all of you is, what are some benefits of taking care of your health? Now, some of these may be very obvious, but if you think a little bit harder, there may be some other things that don't necessarily appear right there on the surface. What are some benefits of taking care of your health? So you hear living longer. Oh, okay. Going back on the last question, we just got another answer for the first question. I surround myself with positive people, seek professional help when needed. And what's the benefit of taking care of your health? Happiness. Able to take care of others. And that's the kind of thing that I was talking about when thinking beyond our instinctual answers. As Mayor Woods said, we can better for those who depend on us if we are taking care of our physical, mental, and emotional needs as well. Live longer. That's absolutely true as well. Better life satisfaction. These are all absolutely correct. And this is the kind of thing where we could sit here and we could answer these two questions for the entire time that we have. Give one incorrect answer and not exhaust the entire list of answers. There's a lot of answers. And thank you to those of you who answered. Another one here. When I am balanced, I am a positive influence on my family and friends. We can be the best version of ourselves for our kids, for our spouse, for our... It's like when you're in an airplane and they tell you, in case the cabin depressurizes, put your own oxygen mask on first before you put on your child's. It is instinctual for us as parents to want to take care of kids first, and we should feel that way. But if we're not filling up our own cup, it's hard to pour into others. Now, Deronda, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Let's talk about what can start happening if someone is either not taking care of their mental, emotional, their physical needs, or if they've gone through several stressors in a compacted period of time. If things are starting to add up for them, what types of signs and symptoms start showing? Now, we focus heavily on youth at notMYkid. So I'm going to speak to this standpoint for those of parents, grandparents, guardians, aunts, uncles, even educators. You know the kids in your life better than anyone. You know what is normal for them: normal voice, body language, facial expressions, level of eye contact, how they carry themselves when they come to the door, coming home from school or back from sports practice. Or if you're an educator, you know what they look like when they enter your classroom every day. One of us can have one bad day or two bad days. That's part of life. But when you are checking off multiple changes in behavior that you see on this list in combination over a prolonged period of time, a week, certainly 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that is pointing towards someone who is dealing with a mental or behavioral health challenge. It may be depression. It may be anxiety or stress. It may be substance use issues, bullying. They may be going through issues with the relationship that they're in. But what it means to us is the caring, present, involved adults in their lives. We take note of it. Don't deny it. Don't overlook it. Sit down and begin a conversation with them and find out what is leading to what we're seeing and how we can help them, or how we can get them connected to professional help. Deronda, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide as well. Now, if stressors continue to build up, and enough of them build up one on top of the other, and that individual does not get the help that they need when they need it, some individuals can begin thinking about suicide. And it's important to also understand what the signs and symptoms of someone who may be thinking about suicide or maybe even making a plan to attempt suicide, what they look like. Direct verbal cues. These are direct references to death or dying. These will be phrases like, I want to die, I want to kill myself. Those are not typically as common as indirect verbal cues, that second bullet point. There's no direct reference to death or dying, but they're phrases like, I wish I was never born. I wish I could go to sleep and never wake up. I can't handle life anymore. I'm so over all of this. No direct reference to death or suicide, but you can see where some of that phrasing may be pointing towards someone who is not only struggling with mental or behavioral health challenges, but potentially considering suicide. Behavioral cues. These are things like someone who is no longer completing tasks. Because if you're thinking that your life is going to be ending, completing your history homework is suddenly not that important to you. Taking out the garbage, which your parents have asked you to do, is suddenly not that important to you. Someone who begins giving their possessions away. If you're seeing a child who's giving their things away, suddenly all of them, things that they genuinely pretty much care about, that may be indicative of someone considering suicide as well. Because again, if you're thinking your life is going to end, your iPhone, your skateboard, whatever it is suddenly not very important to you. Someone who is not typically very affectionate, suddenly becoming very affectionate, giving lots of hugs and kisses as if they're saying their goodbyes. And then finally, someone who is making amends, who's righting all the wrongs that they've made, tying up loose ends. Now, making amends in and of itself isn't a concerning thing. It's a wonderful thing. But in combination with these other signs and symptoms we're talking about, that can be pointing towards someone who is considering suicide. And finally, situational cues. These are stressors in someone's life that can put them at greater risk to consider or attempt suicide. A terminal illness, a prolonged illness, the death of a loved one, a child who's getting a divorce, a child who's being bullied, a child is coming from a neglectful or abusive environment, a kid who is constantly being uprooted and transplanted from a new school to a new school constantly and has no chance to build a social support network. Those can all be things that can lead up to someone just feeling overwhelmed and then considering suicide. So think of this list. If you know someone in your life, a young person or even an adult, that you're going through this list in your mind and you may be mentally checking these things off, especially in combination, they are at greater risk for considering or attempting suicide. We need to begin a conversation with them. And on the next slide, Geronda, if you wouldn't mind advancing it, here is how we begin the conversation. First and foremost, start a conversation by asking an open-ended question. A question that can't be answered by yes or no. Asking, are you doing okay, is a closed-ended question. And preteens, teens, adolescents, they are masters of deflection. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. But if your parental instinct is kicking in and it is telling you something is not right and you're seeing those signs and symptoms, don't take the first answer that you get, but begin with an open-ended question. Now, as you're having the conversation with them, if you're hearing phrasing that may be pointing towards suicide, you've already seen the signs and symptoms, and this is all adding up in your mind to making you think this individual may be suicidal. Not only is it okay to ask about suicide or if they're considering it, we need to. Keep it simple. Ask one of two ways. Be very direct. Are you considering suicide? Are you thinking about suicide, or are you thinking about killing yourself? We don't want to ask, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Because that person may think, no, I'm not thinking about hurting myself. And they could honestly answer, no, that's not where what I'm thinking. We also don't want to phrase it with a tone like this. You're not thinking about suicide, are you? Because that phrase, that tone right there says, because if you are, don't tell me, I don't want to know. It's not a very inviting way to ask it. And I want to encourage you, do not worry that asking it is going to plant that mind in that person's head. A lot of people are worried that if they ask about it, if they bring the topic up, they're going to increase the likelihood of that individual acting out or making that attempt or that completion. Research has shown that not only does it make it more likely that they will attempt suicide, it reduces it. Imagine if you are the first person that recognizes that their level of hurt is so intense, and you are the person that is finally empathetic enough to feel that pain with them and finally ask that question and recognize that. That's going to lift some of that burden off of them. Yes, I am thinking about it. Finally, somebody recognizes that. Then actively listen. Next bullet point. That could be its own slide in 200-point font, just the word listen. That could be its own presentation. Let's not listen for what we think we're going to hear, what we want to hear, not listen to respond, but really listen, because if we're not actively listening, we may miss something very important in there. It may be hesitation about wanting to die. It may be a tiny little glimmer of hope about the future, but we're going to harness that thing that we hear in their story, shine a spotlight on it, repeat it back to them in their own words, and get an agreement from them to use that to keep them healthy and alive and safe just for right now. The future, we're not going to worry about that right now, just right now. Maintain composure. Let me back up here. Offer support, validation, and empathy. It's so important to validate their feelings, to empathize, to use phrases like, I can tell you're in a lot of pain right now. I can tell that what you're going through right now is really hurting you. Feel that with them. Maintain your composure. Now, if someone you care about, especially your own child, is telling you that they are thinking about ending their own life, you are going to feel emotion. We can't just flip a switch and suddenly turn it off. But we can't lose our composure. If they see us losing our composure, they are likely to shut down. And that's the last thing we want, is for that communication to be shut down. Be conscious of your tone of voice, body language, facial expression, and level of eye contact. Depending on what research you read, as much as 93% of the message that is conveyed is not in our words. It is in our nonverbals. So be conscious. Sit down with them. Make eye contact. Sit in close proximity with them. Make eye contact. Allow them to break it. Don't look at your phone. Don't look at your watch. Shut the whole world out and make it clear to them, I am here with you in this moment. Everything else can wait, and I will be here as long as it takes to make sure I keep you healthy and safe. And offer hope. It can be something very small. You're not going to be able to solve all of their problems. You may not be able to solve any of their problems. And it's not realistic to think that we can, but if we can offer even the tiniest little glimmer of hope, that can be enough to keep them alive for right now, long enough to get them connected to professional care, which is the next bullet point. And finally, do not leave them alone. If they have the intent to attempt suicide, they have a plan, and they have the means to do it, suicide may be imminent. We cannot leave them until they are connected directly to someone. We do what's called a warm handoff. And when we connect them to someone who is able to help them, someone who is willing, ready, and able, we need to make sure that that person that takes it from there is aware, this individual who I'm now entrusting to your care has been telling me that they are considering suicide. Suicide is what we're talking about here. And finally, under the picture, and this will be in the resources we give you later, 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Every adult, every individual should have this programmed into their phone. If you get someone who tells you they are considering suicide and you don't know what to do from there, you can connect them to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We're having this conversation about this for a very good reason. We can save a life. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to be a behavioral health professional. You just have to be willing. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Geronda Montano, and she will be taking it from here.
Thank you, Shane. So I want you all to consider that when you think about health, I want you to consider that it's on a spectrum. So Shane has given us a really nice overview of what it looks like when a person is struggling with thoughts of suicide, is at that point of crisis. And if you take a look at the slide in front of you, what you see is a line from healthy to crisis and a couple of things in between. So take a look at this slide and think about just an average day as you wake up with whatever you've had going on. And I want you to think for yourself, where would you place yourself on the line? Now I'm going to go through each spot on the line so that you can get a better idea of what that looks like. And I also want you to think about, if you have kids, if you work with kids, if you have other family members in your house, also maybe think about signs or symptoms that they've talked to you about. So when we start at the place of healthy is really just, it's the normal place, our normal mood and behavior. And when I say normal, there's not anything that's compromising that's going on. It's my average every day. This is just, I'm doing the things that I do. I just am dealing with the things that I'm dealing with, and I'm good. I'm pretty good. I'm socially active, so I might be connecting with friends, connecting with family. Right now, because of the situation we're in, I might have to do that a lot more through methods like this with Zoom, or I might be at night calling my best friend, but it's my average, normal, everyday thing. Actions that you can take to stay in that stage of health. You can identify support systems. So if you haven't connected with support systems, or you don't know exactly who your support systems are, and you feel like you're in that healthy stage, or your kids are there, then you definitely want to know who those healthy supports are for you. For youth, having a positive peer network is really, really important. If you don't know who their positive peer network is, or if you have a child who has disconnected from their peer network, and they're in that healthy stage, that's another way where you can support them, just making sure that they maintain or get connected to a positive peer network and just maintaining a healthy lifestyle. There are a lot of areas of health that you can focus on. You could focus on being healthy mentally, where you're learning new things, being healthy physically, where you're eating well, drinking plenty of water. You can focus on giving to others. There's lots of different stages in there. And with the hour that we have, I'm going to keep it brief. But as we move from healthy, we might get into an area where we're feeling stressed. Now, there's normal everyday stresses, not to say that every day we feel stressed, but there might be normal stresses that are just something happened in my life that day that I preferred didn't happen. And I'm feeling a little irritable about it. When I'm in a stage where I'm at a stress level of health, maybe I'm feeling that irritability more than just that one time. I'm feeling that irritability today, tomorrow, next week. I'm feeling, I'm having maybe some trouble sleeping, trouble going to sleep, trouble staying asleep. I have lower energy. I might feel a little nervousness, or just, have that feeling inside of me that things just aren't settled right for me. Things that you can do, action steps at that point, just recognize your limits. It's really important that we recognize when enough is enough. Right now, I need to take a break. I need to walk away. I need to walk outside. Get rest. Rest is so critical. And I'll tell you, with our cell phones, if you have that cell phone flipped up or in a place where that blue light's coming on all night, then it interrupts your sleep. It interrupts our sleep. So if that phone could be placed in some place where either it's turned over or it's away from your head or your area in bed, it will help. It helps to decrease the interruptions in your sleep. So that would just be another factor that would interrupt your sleep. Even if you stay asleep, you're not getting complete sleep. So recognizing how to create some methods for yourself to get better rest. Also minimize your stressors. You know what your stressors are. You know the things that just in an instant will have you, I'm not okay with this, or I'm not feeling this, right? So minimize those stressors. Also develop some healthy coping strategies. You probably already have some. Maybe there's some that you used to have that you don't do anymore. I used to be a runner. I don't do it as much anymore, but I know that relieves my stress. So I might want to go out for a run because I know that that's a stress relief for me. But for you, if running is like the last thing you would ever think of doing, don't do it, because you know that that's going to increase your stress level. You guys get me? All right. So when you move from stressed to the next phase, struggling is the next, I'll call it solid phase. And the reason I call it solid is because there's a spectrum in all of it. You could be healthy, but you could be approaching stress. You could be stressed, but you could be moving to approaching struggling. When you're in that struggling state, or when we're in that struggling state, this is where we're feeling some anxiety. Anxiety is a response to stress. It is your body's reaction to stress in your life. So feeling anxiety, as opposed to just anxious, when I say anxiety, you've felt this pressure that's causing maybe some panic, that's causing some worry, and maybe excessive worry or continuous worry. That will be classified as anxiety. And there's lots of different types of anxiety that people live with. You might feel anger. You might withdraw from people. You also might start having feelings of hopelessness. This is in the stage of struggling. So what can you do in this stage? You want to understand your signs of distress. So if for you, whenever you're starting to feel, whenever you're struggling, maybe you stop eating, or maybe you stay up later at night, or maybe you decide that you don't want to talk to the same people that you were talking to, and you start to withdraw a bit, not answering the phone as much, or not responding to text messages. Just your daily activities are changed and compromised in a way that doesn't give you the supports that you would need. So understand those signs for yourself and seek those supports. Those are just two things that you could do in that stage. And then we get to crisis. So again, as we move down the spectrum or up the spectrum, we get to crisis. It may be that point where we are, but it's not a destination. There's been a journey to get there. And when I say it's not a destination, we don't typically just head straight there. There could be some situations that would take us there, like losing a loved one unexpectedly or being in a car accident. Definitely there are some things that could take us there. In just an average day-to-day experience of someone, they may have journeyed from healthy to crisis. And so when you're in crisis, signs that you might want to look for is feeling exhaustion or seeing someone who seems to always be exhausted, physical illness. The mind-body connection is so real, so connected, that the thoughts or worry that I have can cause me to have the upset stomach, the headaches, literally causing my palms to be sweaty. So that physical illness, and then illness that you can't explain. Seems like I have a cold, but no one else around me has cold or flu-like symptoms. Now, that seems that there's a little bit more anxiety that might be around that. And we'll talk about that in just a bit, but just paying attention to those things. Seeking professional support at the point of crisis is really important. So you've heard it a couple of times here. It is really important that we know where we can get professional support. We know that it is available, and we know that it's okay for us to seek that professional support. So as I started to mention, what I want to get into is having a brief little public service announcement about trauma. Because we are in a stage of life for everyone at this time, and collectively we're all experiencing a bit more isolation. We're experiencing a worldwide pandemic. We're experiencing maybe concerns about how we keep ourselves healthy and safe and away from contracting any illness or disease. That experience may cause a traumatic, that experience may cause trauma. So in responding to traumatic events, let's talk about that a little bit. First, with trauma, every person that has the same situation or similar situation will not necessarily be traumatized by it, because trauma is not an incident. Trauma is an experience, and that experience may look different for one person than it does for another. So just think about, you have two people in a car accident, and one person doesn't want to get in a car again because they're just so traumatized by what happened, and another person is ready to get back in the car and just let's get a new car and let's start over. Trauma is not an incident. You can't just look at the incident and determine that a person was traumatized by it. You really have to talk to the person, understand how the person has processed it, and in supporting that person, encourage them to get supports and encourage them to identify a person who is supportive. For your young people, knowing who their go-tos are. They have aces. They have aces in their pocket. Their ace certainly is you, can be you, should be you, and you're not the only one. So having another person who you know is their go-to, it could be a teacher, it could be a coach, it could be a religious leader, it could be an older adult in the family, it could be a grandparent, it could be an aunt or uncle, but someone who's there to support that young person. But do the same for yourself. Know ahead of time who your supports are, because if you have a traumatic experience, or if you're in the midst of this whole situation we're in being traumatic for you, having a support person can be some relief for you. At the same time, identify a comfortable place for yourself. Where is some place that you can go and you like to go? Those of you who know me, you know I like to go in the pantry. You know I like to hide in the pantry. That is my comfortable place. So how many of you have a comfortable place? And you can drop that in the chat box if you know where your comfortable place is. Also making sure that we're staying away from negative coping tools. Negative coping skills and tools, in the short term, they might feel like this is relieving, this is relaxing. And I say that lightly because there are some negative coping tools that can have a far greater impact than others, and life-changing or life-altering, lifelong impact than others. A negative coping tool, like maybe I'm going to walk away from people when they, when I'm feeling anxious, what that could do is that could disconnect you, as opposed to indulging in substance abuse. Two different situations, still a negative way to cope with it. And one of those could be extremely life-altering as opposed to the other, but you be the judge. And then also identifying positive coping skills. When you identify positive ways that you can work with yourself, when you're in those areas of I'm moving from healthy to stressed, I'm moving from stress to struggling, I'm moving from struggling to crisis. If you have positive coping skills, things that you know have worked for you in the past, you can try to rely on those things, pull those things out of your toolbox to put yourself in a place where you start to heal, or in a place where you start to feel better about the current situation. So those are just some really quick things to think about when it comes to responding to traumatic events. I believe at this point I am passing this over to Sarah, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to go really fast as we're at 2:44 and I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A. But let me just go to the chat box really quickly to see if I have passed any. Yes, so I'm going to go back to here. There's a comment from Facebook that says you can help others. That's one of those areas I talked about that where you can pour into self, and pouring into self, pouring into others is a way to support and care for yourself. Anything that clicks into your heart, that makes you just feel good in your heart, those things are also uplifting and re-energizing. And so definitely helping other people is a way to care for yourself. And then nature is a comfort, safe place. Yes, I absolutely love going outside and looking up at the stars. And I love every time I spot Mars. I don't know, Mars is like my friend or something. We're like this, I don't know why. I see it every time. I love seeing it. And for me, that's very comforting to look up in the sky and see Mars at night. So we are going to move on to giving just a bit more. We're at sort of that action step phase and looking at how you can incorporate this into your family prevention plan. Now, if you've been at a notMYkid presentation before, you know that in every presentation, we have a family prevention plan. Some of the points are very similar, but depending on what you're talking about, there may be a difference in the way that you fill in your plan. So if you take a look here down the list, these are just categories: being consistent, communicating, educating yourself, being honest, deterring any behavior that's unwanted or negative, monitoring that behavior, educating your community like this, and then verifying that you're getting what you want. These would all be in the realm of how you can have, lead, and be in a conversation with your family. Sarah, I'm going to let you jump in to make sure I'm not stealing the spot. Is Sarah still in here?
All good. And so this is the time, like Geronda talked about, that we are going to move into some of those action steps and some of those resources. And so the family prevention plan is an awesome resource. It's customizable to your family. We understand every family is different. So we do have a template on notmykid.org. We have a lot of resources. You can visit notmykid.org, access those resources. You can download our template and customize your plan that way, or you can create your own. But we just encourage the adults in the house to actually intentionally have these conversations, like often, to identify what are the things that we're going to do to be consistent, to make sure that we're communicating. How are we going to make sure that we're monitoring our teens, whether that be in person or online, and just everybody being on the same page about what prevention plan and strategies are in place. That's really important. And then for those to be communicated to the teens and to the children in the house. So that's just one resource at notMYkid we do have on our website that you can take advantage and use today. And then Geronda, if you actually want to go to the next slide. I'm just going to talk real quick about some other resources. Before I do, though, we are going to be having a Q&A. So if you've been listening and there's been a question that comes to mind, whether you're in our Zoom or you can comment on Facebook as well. We do have the mayor still on the line, and so he will be here to answer some questions if you have one for him. Or if you have one for Geronda, Shane, or myself, we are happy to answer those. So while I'm going over these resources, please submit your questions. And so the first and one of the biggest resources that I want to talk about today is the Tempe Coalition. This is a hub of resources for the Tempe community. And I say that as a proud member of the coalition. I cannot advocate for it enough. The Tempe Coalition is a group of professionals and citizens who live, work, or play in Tempe, and they come together for the wellness of Tempe, and specifically Tempe youth. So our mission is to inspire positive life choices in Tempe youth and reduce some risk behaviors. And so we are always looking for people to join our coalition. Parents can join, teachers, honestly, anybody, any professional, anybody in Tempe. If you would like to be a part of the coalition and help Tempe youth, we meet the second Tuesday of every month. We're doing Zoom meetings, so it's really easy. You can go to tempecoalition.org to learn more about the coalition, to find out when the next meeting is. We also have an event coming up in November. If you go to the website, you can register for this free event. It's called Celebrating Champions for Youth, and you can attend our event. It's going to be a virtual event. Also on the Tempe website, you can find out all of the partners on the coalition. So this is a great resource for people, because if you have a teen in your life or something going on in your family and you need to get connected to a specific resource, the coalition is a great place to start, because there are so many different members on the coalition that I am sure can connect you to some specific help and support. So the Tempe Coalition is a good place to start. Another good resource is 211, and you can either call 211 or you can go to 211.org, and there's information to get. You can go on there or call to get information on anything. So we're not just limited to mental health, but other resources as well. As we're going through this situation, if something does come up, that's just another good go-to catch-all resource place. And then we have Teen Lifeline. Teen Lifeline is a really good resource for teens. If you have a teen that is in high school, it's possible that this phone number is on the back of one of their old badges. So you can even ask your teen about it to see if they've heard about it before, but it's one that notMYkid has been giving out for years. And the reason that we love Teen Lifeline is because they have other teenagers answering the phone. And those teenagers have gone through extensive training to be able to be good listeners and to really relate to when teens are calling in. So if you have a teen and they're going through something big or small, it can really be about any issue. They can call Teen Lifeline between the hours of 3 and 9 p.m. and another teen will answer the phone during that time. They also have text available during those hours too. So that's a great resource for teens. On the other side of the screen, you'll see the crisis text line, the suicide prevention lifeline that Shane mentioned earlier, and then we have the Trevor Project, which is a hotline specific to LGBTQ issues. Those are some national resources that are really good to have. If you are on this Zoom call, take a picture of the screen. These are good numbers to just have programmed in your phone so that when something comes up, you can just pull it up really easily. These are also on the notMYkid website, and we post this really often on our Facebook as well. After going through these resources, I do want to open it up to Q&A, but before I do, I want to ask our moderator, Ariza, if she has seen any questions come through. And while we're doing that, I just want to show on the screen, if you need to contact us, you can email info@notmykid.org. I'll go to our website, and then another amazing resource is our podcast that Shane hosts. It's called Win This Year. And Shane, I don't know if you want to talk about your podcast real quick while we're waiting on a question.
Yes, definitely. Win This Year. If you forget the name of it, you can just search notMYkid podcast on Google. You'll be able to find it. It is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Alexa, pretty much all mainstream podcast outlets. We are now 25 episodes in. We've got episodes on all of the topics that notMYkid educates on. Every episode is interesting, informative, and inspiring. We want you to feel like it was time well spent listening to it. We want you to feel something emotionally from the episodes, but we want you to walk away from every episode having learned at least one tangible thing that you can implement into your life as a parent or as a grandparent, as an educator, something that you can actually apply that's useful. And we've had some incredible, amazing guests. Once again, it's called Win This Year. You can search Win This Year podcast on Google or Not My Kid podcast on Google, and you can listen to it on demand wherever you are. Even if you want to listen to it on an Apple Watch, you can listen to it through whatever device. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I put in the chat box a specific link. If you want the information that we shared today, all of this specific mental health surrounding stress, anxiety, depression, you can go to notmykid.org/depression to get all of this specific information as well. So I am going to ask Arisa if we have any questions.
Yes, I actually have a question for the mayor. Someone had asked, how can you encourage youth to seek out help and model good behavior?
Let's see. Can you see my video?
Yes, we can see you.
Perfect. Okay. For some reason, it wasn't showing on my own screen. So yes, absolutely. I think there are multiple things. I know there was, conversation about the Tempe Coalition, which is a fantastic resource. I actually served on that board for a couple of years. So I would encourage you to reach out to the Tempe Coalition. If not, at the City of Tempe, we have plenty of resources. Our Care 7 group specializes in helping people who might be really struggling for the time being. So frankly, I would reach out to our folks at Care 7. Chris Charlo is the person who's very much responsible for that program. We have a lot of great resources within our Human Services Department. And then I would just say, last but not least, feel free to reach out to me directly. My email address, Corey_Woods@tempe.gov. You can definitely reach me there anytime, or I'm pretty much on every social media platform, like, some of the previous speakers talking about all the different platforms that his podcast was on. I'm on everything from Twitter to Instagram to Facebook. I mean, so the reality is, if you'd like to reach out to me personally because you want to have a conversation, or you'd like for me to help you connect you with certain kinds of resources, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me directly. And I'd be more than happy to help you myself, or to make sure I can direct you to some of the city resources I talked about earlier. But either way, I want everyone who's watching this to know that there is help out there, and it's only a phone call away.
Thank you. All right, I've got another question here. My child is a senior in high school and really angry about everything they're missing. I, as a parent, am angry too. What are some suggestions for coping?
Sorry, I can take that one. I think it's a really good idea right now to do some intimate conversations with those seniors. So we always encourage having family talks and family gatherings and family dinner, but having some one-on-one conversations with each parent, just making sure that that senior is feeling heard. But the other side of that question that you mentioned is the hurt and the loss that's being felt by the parent as well. That young person is getting ready to move on to another stage of life. And definitely there are a lot of things to look forward to there. There also might be some fears and anxieties about that. And so having those conversations with the parent, with how the parent feels about that, with that child moving on, and then how the child feels about that as well. And then do some planning for some fun and encouraging things and some fun ways to celebrate where they are right now, not just leaving it to, well, we missed out, we lost it, and unfortunately this year is what it is. Do some creative, amazing things as a family to celebrate that senior. So it's, even though they lost those things that were at school, they gained so much from their family at home that may not have happened if they had, still had the dances and proms and all that, those sort of things. So that's my quick answers. What do you guys think?
I couldn't say it any better. I'm going to leave it at your answer. Most definitely. And so definitely validate and acknowledge their feelings as being very real. Sometimes as adults, we look at the loss that a teen suffers, or loss of a prom or a homecoming or a sports season. It seems very minor to us, having the adult stress and the adult loss that we're all facing in 2020. And it can get easy to look at that and think to ourselves, well, that's not a big deal. It's very real to them, based on their lack of life experience in comparison to the level of experience that we've had as adults. That's a very real loss to them. And those feelings are valid and those feelings are real. And if we can acknowledge those and we can validate them, they will feel like they're heard. And use that word earlier, making sure that they feel like that they're, nobody likes to be told that their feelings aren't real. So acknowledging, I understand why you feel the way that you do.
I'm going to add my 2 cents as we wrap up here, because Shane and Durand, I love what you said. I really resonate with this mom that asked the question, because I also have a senior, and a lot of us have seniors, and a lot of us had seniors last year. And we actually don't know how long this is going to go on for. And I think that even when Geronda talks about, how to have fun and do things that are different and connect, probably the greatest advice I heard from Shane giving this once before was letting our kids be heard, let them share it and validate it, because we never lost our senior year like this. It is a real thing. And a lot of people will acknowledge that as grief. And everybody has their opinions on whether it was good or bad, or, whatever that is, it's theirs. And so, Shane, I really, really resonate with your advice. I try to really pay attention to what they are missing as seniors. So it is, I think a lot of times when we're hearing parents, there's a lot of these kids that have been home since last year, in their junior year, and there were things that they were lining up for college through sports that are getting canceled. These are real things that our kids are going through right now. And I think it is important that we pay close attention to that loss and honor it. So I want to really just go back to what our mayor did talk about, that mental health counseling might be a great resource for your child, and to think about that as a possibility or a need. notMYkid did open up an outpatient treatment center in the last few months. Tempe Care 7 is another resource in the town. There are programs throughout the valley, and if we can be there to help you navigate that, please do reach out to us, because we do understand what you're going through, and we want to also be a resource in case you haven't heard something that is resonating with you just yet. So on that note, I think we are ready to wrap. We are going to be available. If anyone has questions, you can email us at programs@notmykid.org. You can message us through Facebook. We are here to support you, and want to thank everyone again for your time and participation today. And Mayor Corey Woods, thank you so much for being here and sticking with us for the whole program today. So grateful for you.
Absolutely. Great program, and it's exceptional work that notMYkid does. So I'm very proud to be in support of everything you're doing, and I'm glad we've got such a great partnership with the City of Tempe. So anything you need, or anyone on the call needs, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone at the city anytime.
Thank you. All right, everybody, we're signing off. Thank you so much, and we will see you soon. Have a great day.